right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're up to about 60 attendees right now. We'll give it just another minute to allow a few more to join, and then we will get started. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon to attend the Ohio Federal Research Network's Round 5 SOARING pre-release information session with our federal partners. And I'll start off with just a couple of housekeeping items. If you would please mute your microphones during the presentation, that would be great. If you're experiencing any audio problems, you can use the chat feature to send a message to Becky Meisher, and she can try to help out with getting that to work. There is the Q&A ability in this webinar at the bottom of your screen. What we'd like to try to do today to see if it works better is, as we go through all of the areas of interest with our federal partners, if you have a question that you're dying to ask, but it's about AOI number 8, please wait until we get to AOI number 8 before you ask the question. That way, hopefully we can keep track of the questions and try to get as many answered as possible today. If you're having any other additional problems or you would really like to try to come up voice, you can raise your hand, and we will try to keep track of that and call on you, and then allow you to unmute to be able to ask a question for that. So with that, my name is Mark Bartman, Major General, retired United States Air Force. I am the program executive for OFRN and Apex at Ohio State University. And I am standing in today for Bob Tanner, the executive director of the Ohio Federal Research Network. He had a family emergency and was not able to attend today. So I will do the best I can, but I doubt that I'll be a suitable substitute for Bob and his expertise and everything that goes on. We'd like to start, though, by handing off to Dennis Andrus, who's the CEO for Parallax Advanced Research Corporation, for just a few opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, General Bartman, and thank you, everybody, for attending today. We've been through 4 rounds now over the past 6 years, and many very high-quality projects and products have come out of the endeavor. We still have strong support at the state level for the activities, and so we've gotten the green light to proceed with this solicitation in round 5 from a couple of sources of funding, one from state funding as well as some special CARES funding that actually came into the state. What you're going to see today that's maybe a little different than we've done in the past is tighter engagement with the federal SMEs, and we spent a lot of time working on the AOIs over the past 3 or 4 months, areas of interest with the federal SMEs. We've done some analytics to find out, make sure we got the right folks involved. And you'll find a different engagement than maybe you've seen in the past with the SMEs going forward. And I can't thank the federal partners of AFRL, Brian McGilton, folks at NASIC, the folks at NASA Glenn, as well as NAMRU. They've been very, very actively engaged in defining these AOIs, and I think you'll find them much better laid out. Much better is the wrong word, but they're laid out much better, and we've actually got points of contact that you can work with. So if you've got questions today, as General Barton said, please ask, and onward we go. So good luck to all of you.
Becky, if you could start with the presentation on the first slide, I would appreciate it. And while we're doing that, I will mention, so for the coordinators today from our federal partners, from the Air Force Research Laboratory, we have Brian McGilton. From the NASA Glenn is Kurt Sackstetter. From NASIC, John Hawkins, and NAMRD is Rick Arnold. As everybody understands, there's, of course, potential for all kinds of technical issues when it comes to doing these kinds of webinars and presentations. So there are possibilities that some of the individuals may or may not be able to make it today, but we do have representatives from all those organizations. So hopefully we'll be able to get your questions answered. So what we're planning on doing today, as you can see by the agenda, is we'll try to just skip through the first few slides fairly quickly, because obviously I think the main reason that you're probably here is to want to be able to get some of your questions answered that you might have on round 5 and the areas of interest that are associated with that. We do, though, want to give you a little bit of additional background information, because there are some differences between this round and the previous rounds as far as the way that some of the teaming can potentially be done. And we'll have Dave Nestick, who will talk a little bit about that later on. And he's the director for CIBR and STTR programs for OFRN and APEX. And then we'll wrap it up towards the end, and hopefully we'll have been able to answer all your questions. So next slide, please, Becky. So I think many of you probably are already familiar with the Ohio Federal Research Network and when it was established back in 2015. The bottom line, obviously, for what the Ohio Federal Research Network is doing deals with technology push-pull and trying to make those connections between academia, industry, and government in support of the U.S. defense and space missions. So those are the things that we really try to focus on. Although I think if you look through the AOIs, you'll see that what we're really also trying to do is to address the ecosystem when it comes to all of the issues that our federal partners are dealing with today. So we've already had questions, I know, in the past of somebody maybe from academia saying, well, you know, my technology or what I'm developing doesn't specifically fit into the exact wording maybe of one of the AOIs. That may be okay. There may be, in fact, a way that it does fit in because it meets part of the ecosystem of what we're trying to address for today. So please feel free to ask those questions and we'll get you an answer for that. Next slide, please. So we have a number of strategic focus areas for the Ohio Federal Research Network. As I mentioned, the first one, of course, is to capitalize on those federal and university research needs that we have, but it's also to try to better train university partners in how to partner with our federal partners and to compete for both funding from the state of Ohio and then potentially long-term additional federal funding as well. Next slide, please. So again, as some of you probably may know, our federal partners are Air Force Research Labs, National Air and Space Intelligence Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the Naval Medical Research Unit in Dayton, and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Glenn Research Center up near Cleveland. We also have additional partners in the Ohio Adjutant General's office as well as the Ohio Department of Transportation. And as you can see from the left-hand side of your slide, we're partnering currently with 12 universities, 2 community colleges, and then, of course, 90 plus businesses and 8 spin-out organizations to date. Next slide. So far, we have leveraged $40 million in Ohio Federal Research Network funding that have funded 28 projects and have resulted in over $194 million in follow-on funding. Importantly to the taxpayers of the state of Ohio, I think, is that we've created over 900 jobs so far to this point, have 12 invention disclosures, and as I mentioned, the 8 spin-out organizations. And those organizations have raised almost $5 million in funding. Next slide. So this is an illustration of rounds 3 and 4. And as I mentioned, round 5 is a little bit different, but just to kind of give you all an idea of what round has been funded in the past by project type. So in sort of the middle of the slide, you'll see that there's 4 of those large arrows, colored arrows pointing to the right. Those were round 3 projects. And then the 6 arrows to the right of that were round 4 projects that were funded. And you can see that, that they follow in line with the overall vision of making Ohio the nexus for unmanned air systems, personal air vehicles, or logistics delivery air vehicles for that. So, but as I mentioned, round 5 is a little bit different and has some broader categories. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, the teams that get put together for round 5 have to contain at least one industry member. That industry member can either be the lead applicant or it can be a collaborator. And as we've already had some questions that have been asked, the industry can be out of state, but it must have in-state locations that are doing the most of the work. At least 2 Ohio colleges, universities, and of course the Air Force Institute of Technology is eligible to be a partner. They just need to be able to show how the work that's being done is going to create jobs in the state of Ohio. And then of course, at least 1 federal partner or sponsor as part of that team. Next slide. These are the current dates and the requirements for the proposals. That was in the pre-release, and there'll be updates that'll be coming out on this as well. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide for right now. One new item in round 5 is this student experience engagement initiative requirement. It'll actually be in the final proposal that gets sent out. It was not included in the pre-draft because it was an attachment, but the description will be on exactly what it is that we're looking for here. And really the idea behind this is we felt we needed to engage the student population within academia here in the state of Ohio at a greater level than what we'd done in the past. And so we understand that obviously each team is going to potentially have different abilities when it comes to being able to handle interns or students that are working with the team. They may be able to handle different time periods. You know, some students maybe can only do a semester or maybe only during the summertime due to their academic load. Other students may be interested in more of a long-term arrangement with the teams. So there's a fair amount of flexibility that's associated with this. And as I mentioned, there'll be a lot more detail that's coming out here in the near future for that as well. Next slide. These are the current dates that we have. The next big one will be the formal release of the document here soon, and then the proposal training on December the 2nd, which is a mandatory requirement. Next slide. And just as a reminder, sort of how the process works is that the proposals that are received are reviewed by the Technical Review Council. And then those proposals that merit further decision will be briefed or will provide the individuals an opportunity, the teams, excuse me, an opportunity to pitch to the Technical Review Council with a Q&A period associated with that. And then the Technical Review Council recommends the award selection to the Executive Review Board at a later date. So at this point in time, I will turn it over to Brian from Air Force Research Lab to go through our federal partner areas of interest.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Brian Chilton with Air Force Research Laboratory. I apologize for not video casting myself. This is the second time today I've been on a video call that my computer ended up crashing on me. So it just happened right before we started this session with you all. So I'm just going to communicate audibly right now. So again, welcome. I guess some of the things that has been discussed already through what Dennis has conveyed as well as Mark is that this data call that we're approaching is a little bit different than what we have done in the past. I've been part of OFRN with regards to the technical review team. Oh, great. I'm sorry, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Brian.
Okay, my computer is doing it again, so I'll try to get through this. We have set this up differently because my exposure to OFRN over the last several years was we had a number of proposals that were delivered through the solicitation.
We lost you, Brian.
Obviously, I jinxed him at the very beginning by talking about technological difficulties. We have a question on the slide deck. It'll be posted on the website after we complete today. Becky, do we have somebody else from AFRL that can jump in here for a little bit?
Yeah, this is Barth Shank. I'm here. I can speak to the vertical takeoff and landing if you want me to start that way.
That would be great. Yep. Let's go ahead and start with that.
Okay. So kind of briefly, this complements the Agility Prime work. I think probably a lot of people who are on the teleconference are probably at least familiar with Agility Prime. If you aren't, you know, there's a site set up for that, and you can go get in there. But this is where the Air Force is trying to leverage the activity that the venture capitalists are doing in the electric VTOL community, and what they are working on to try to get these sky taxis and things like that put together. So as an adjunct activity to that, there are some things that we are looking at in terms of critical capabilities that would facilitate military utility of them if they were to grow this way. And these are really kind of dual use type activities that what works good for the military really does work good for the civilian application as well. But you know, part and parcel is the battery and energy storage. Right now, the first generation one of the Agility Prime air taxis are really vehicles that are 100% battery. The venture capitalists are trying to expedite entry into market. So things with longer duration charges and things like that, longer ranges, longer payloads, or bigger payloads rather, those are kind of in the second wave, things that might use hybrid electric systems. Right now, that all battery system work that most are doing right now, it's all about the business case of recharging quickly. You know, kind of a notional business model for these sky taxis is you land, people disembark off of the airplane, and while another group of 3 or 4 people are embarking on the same vehicle, it is completely recharging, so it can go fly another 10-mile trip or whatever. So the idea is for continuous operations. So a lot of cycles of charging and discharging. You might need to be able to only use like rooftops and things like that. So the ability for a charging system that works with the rooftop, with what you would find in a residential building or a business building for their kind of voltage, their kind of current capability, and something that could feed that. So basically any rooftop could be a potential landing site, and that feeds militarily into rapid operations and being able to make use of things. If you think of a military environment where maybe there's a lot of competitors for the same energy source, getting in and out in a very rapid period of time is good, just because, you know, we might be in a situation where a lot of different systems have to share the same energy source. So that's why I'm saying there's kind of a commutability between what works good for the commercial environment and then what works good in the military environment. So and so that comes in line with propulsion sources. You know, right now, the energy density of the batteries is needs to be improved, but we're in the infancy of that. And so this is where we're looking towards industry and academia to do that. But then also too, if we're in an urban environment, the noise is critical, ways to mitigate that, because basically you're trying to compete with a roadable Uber automobile. So think of if your aircraft could also offer the same environmental impact as a quiet electric car. That's the environmental impact that both FAA and probably cities will be looking towards for emissions. So that's part and parcel of that. And then living and working around three-dimensional terrain, urban canyons, buildings, uncertain air currents. These things are intended to be unpiloted, or at least that's the goal for them. So having onboard sensing equipment and embedded into the flight control system, those kinds of things that will enable these things to safely operate, even with partial failures in and around these things, where they're going to have all the air data and all the sensing systems that let them get in and out of tight airspace and conceivably dense traffic. That all works together. And then human factors. How do you interact with the vehicle? How do the people on board know what's happening? If the system suddenly has to divert off of what they think the course should be, or take some kind of evasive action, how does that happen? If you have some kind of emergency on board, somebody has a cardiac arrest, how do you land quickly so that person can be taken care of? So those kinds of things come in. And then overall, the air traffic management system of a local conceivably might be dense urban air environment that is literally in uncontrolled airspace, which is usually defined as 700 feet above ground level or less. So there's a lot going on. It all has to be looked at from a system of systems perspective, and therein lies the key to making these things useful and profitable, because the people that can get to market with something very, very safe, efficient, and minimum economic impact or environmental impact has a chance to make it as a market, which they see as can be extremely lucrative. But all those same characteristics will also facilitate operations for the military, just in a slightly different environment with a slightly different emphasis. So that's kind of why we're looking at this. But it is very important. You don't have to submit just for any one particular thing, but the idea is whatever people would submit would be looking at things from a system perspective. And there are a number of these agility prime contractors out there. So anyway, I hope that's a good kind of paintbrush of what we're looking at here in this area.
Great, thanks, Barth. Do we have any questions specifically for AOI 1 that we can try to answer right now? And Brian McJilton, are you back up?
This is Becky Mesher. We do have a question for AOI 1. This is one that had come in from a previous session that we didn't get answered. What involvement has FAA had specifically to designing an integrated traffic control system for VTOL?
That activity is currently underway. First off, I can't tell you at what level that they are, but that issue is actively being worked collaboratively with NASA. NASA has a thrust called the Urban Air Mobility Technical Thrust, and that is joined at the hip with the FAA, in which they are exploring options for air traffic management systems that can accommodate this class of vehicle and these types of things. That I don't know how far along that they are in establishing metrics and protocols, but I do know that that is in work. I think if you, I think urban air mobility, UAM, at NASA, if you go to NASA and look up on their website, I think you will be able to find a point of contact who can give you more succinct answer to the depth at which this problem has been addressed.
Okay, and another question. For the air traffic management goal, does that include both civil airspace management and military approaches?
Right now, the emphasis is on civil. When we're talking about air traffic for military, our use for these things is conceivably out where there isn't like a dedicated air management system, that we're out someplace austere and we're trying to use this to move people and things around. So right now the key emphasis is on the civil aspect of that.
Okay.
But really, yeah.
Okay, and let's see
I see
another.
there's some other ones. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is there interest in personal exposure devices that track physical jobs demands to assess injury risk? I guess that's like in-flight triage. I guess I think that in one of the AOIs that follow this, in looking at casualty evacuation and things like that, I think yes, 100%. But there's a different subject matter expert that can talk specifically to that kind of action, and that's coming up later in the briefing. There was also one about a second wave long duration type vehicles. That topic is very much of interest. We in the military see our issues as being better addressed downstream with longer duration, heavier payload, faster vehicles, and that would mean hybrid systems usually right now are the shortest term option for getting that, where basically some kind of an internal combustion engine is charging is running a generator that's charging a battery. So hybrid systems are very, very much in our interest area.
Becky, if I could just jump in here real quick, just to remind everybody, if you could please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions as opposed to the chat. That would help us out in keeping track of all of those things. And also, somebody did ask a question about looking for partners, and Dave Nestick will actually talk specifically about how to go about doing that here towards the end of the presentation. So if you can hang on towards the end, you will get that question answered. Yeah. So turn it back over to you, Becky.
Okay.
And Brian.
Along with that, if whoever's looking for partners gets on the Agility Prime website, they should be able, there's kind of like a speed dating service there at which people who are interested in what they, and sharing technology and expertise, there's a forum for doing that through Agility Prime.
Yeah, and Ohio Federal Research Network has something that's very similar to that, and that's what Dave will show us here a little bit later on. So, okay, any other questions, Becky, for AOI 1 so far?
Okay, I have one more question that came from our previous session. Does this AOI include cryogenic liquid hydrogen power source solutions?
It could, if you've got something that offers superior energy density and a chance for getting more operational use per unit charge, that was something that is competitive, weight competitive with some of the lithium ion systems, bring it on. But just remember that we are looking at this from an entire system of systems perspective. So in terms of, you got to think of that in terms of storage facilities required, special handling materials, all that kind of stuff that goes part and parcel with the cost of ownership of doing such a system has to be brought into consideration for that. So that's just a key thing. Whatever you're bringing to the table, you got to look at it from end to end, because that is the way we are looking at things, is end to end. Does this earn its way into austere operations for a military, and does it on the commercial side, does it earn its way in terms of being profitable? And the onus would be on somebody to provide that business case.
So Becky, this is Brian. I just got back in again. I apologize for my technical issues that I'm having. Were the other two questions that were from last week, the one that was regarding the FAA involvement or the one for air traffic management goals, was that one addressed as well?
Yes, we have addressed all three of them.
Okay, great. All right, thanks.
And I'm not seeing any additional questions for AOI number 1.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian, I don't know if you have anybody else from AFRL that would like to talk about this, but if not, we can feel free to go ahead to the next one.
So I believe we may have Joe Fellner or Joe Weimer on the line. Are either of you two on the call right now?
Joe Fellner's on the line, but I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Same for Joe Weimer.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. We'll go ahead and we'll move on to AOI number 2, which is situational awareness and for proliferated surveillance systems. Our primary SME on this is Mr. Tim Poth from AFRL RY. In addition to Tim, we have some other folks on the line. I believe we have possibly Bryce Schum, Peter Marasco, Alan Carrick, Michelle Champion, and Steven Zek. Are any of you folks on the call right now?
Alan Carrick is here.
Hi, Alan. Would you be able to just kind of give us your perspective overview of this AOI?
This is Bryce Schum too. I think Tim is on.
Yeah, Tim's here.
Oh, good.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm calling me a SME is a stretch, but I'm the senior planner in RY, and so yeah, this focus area, we're looking at kind of two different areas: electro-optical, and Bruce Schum is our SME for the electro-optical side, and RF sensing side, and that's going to be Alan Carrick is the SME for that. So as this was written, I won't read the slide itself, but when we initially put it together, we were focusing on, the EO and IR systems, and we didn't talk too much about components and things like that, but that question did come up last time. And so I'd like to just kind of set the record that, if you're doing some more component kind of work, microelectronics kind of work, but it fits in these areas, we'd certainly be interested in proposals that go along that line. And I think Charles Reiner may also be on the phone as well as one of our experts in the kind of the components area. So with that, I kind of leave it up for if anyone has any questions specifically for the electro-optical side or the RF sensing side or the components. I guess we'll open it up for that right now.
This is Mark Brown from NASIC. Is Steven Zek the person who you're connecting with?
This is Brian McJilton. So yes, Steven Zek is the one who's collaborated from the NASIC side of the house on this AOI.
Is he the only one?
That's the only one that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So this is Brian McJilton again. I guess what I was trying to say before my computer went on the blink. We've gone through a different way of doing this solicitation call, and this is really getting down into some essential areas that we feel are relevant, that would have great value add to our federal partners. And so we have deliberately gone within our enterprise and really engaged with our technical experts within these areas to help elaborate on these AOI descriptions. And so really, for those of you that are interested in participating, that are looking at forming your teams and potentially
wanting to provide solutions, capabilities that would address this AOI, this is the great chance right now to really engage with these SMEs that we have on the call, because they are the authors. They are the ones that were reached out to help pull together, to help verify and validate the validity and the value impact of these AOIs. And again, it's again looking back at the excellence that we have within the state of Ohio from our academia and university partners that we have, looking at how we can leverage you better to meet some of these needed capabilities that we need to move forward with within our federal organization. So, anyways, I just kind of wanted to foot stomp that one more time as we continue on through this. If you have questions for Tim or any of the folks that are associated with this AOI, would really encourage you to cast those questions in right now. Thank you.
Okay, we'll give it just a few seconds and see if there's any questions specifically for AOI number 2 that come in. I have seen some questions come up about technologies that individuals are not sure maybe where they fit. We can work on trying to help out to get those questions answered for you. But I will remind everybody that there is actually a 12th AOI that was added this year that we'll show here shortly. That is somewhat of an open call as well. So if you have something that you think is applicable, but maybe doesn't fit neatly into one of the other AOI categories, you can always look at submitting potentially under the AOI 12. Becky, do we have any questions or anything?
Yes, we have a couple.
Okay.
Let's see. Does this AOI focus on the hardware integration solution?
So I'll take a shot first, and then Bryce and Ellen, if you want to jump in from your side. So certainly hardware integration is a piece of it. I think there could be algorithm work that would be of interest. And so I think it's not just hardware and integration, but that certainly is one piece of it.
And this is Bryce. I totally agree.
Yeah, as does Alan.
I see we have another one, Becky, on the 4th with regards to CSWAP.
Yes, it says the 4th bullet addresses CSWAP in the context of RF systems. Is CSWAP also important to the federal organizations on the EO/IR side?
Yes, absolutely. So, the call talks about both expendable and attritable platforms, moving to platforms that are kind of like missiles that you don't expect to get back, but maybe aren't weapons. So obviously making things cheap enough to do that, as well as attritables where they're cheap enough that they don't cost as much as an F-35, but you're going to send them out and maybe you get them back, maybe you won't. You'd like them back, but so again, pushing down the cost and size of these things is definitely important. So there was one in the comments about laser photon shotgun. I guess I'm certainly willing to talk to folks but I'm not sure what your rules are in talking to individuals.
Yeah, that's entirely up to you as the SMEs. And that's one of the things that Brian and the other federal partner representatives can address as to whether or not they would like to publish names and emails of the contacts or just use them as contacts. So I'll leave that up to you all.
Would it be possible for you guys to, rather than typing my email address here on the chat, could you act as the intermediary there?
Yes, this is Brian. Yeah, one of the things that we've been really trying to be cognizant of and respectful of is your time as a SME. And so what we call the primary SMEs, it's really, they're going to be kind of the vetting or the continuity into the right level of SMEs to engage with folks. So we will be publishing the email addresses of those SMEs, and if there's other SMEs that want to have their information posted, their contact information posted, that's fine. We are just again, we are just trying to be respectful of the valuable time that you guys have, to where you're not getting inundated with, you know, a lot of emails and phone calls, but maybe having it in a little bit more of a controlled state. So that's kind of why we orchestrated these pre-solicitation events, was to provide this opportunity for these opportunities to engage with you all. But also as we near closer to selection, if there's other opportunities that folks want to reach out and engage, we were looking at having them go through the primary SMEs, or if you want to have your information available to you as well. So
I think, and that's, so it sounds like Tim's information will be out there, but
yes.
that ought to work. And I guess I can respond to that question a little more directly, and that is, you know, anything that we can get that has convergence between directed energy weapons and laser or an active EO sensor technologies is certainly of interest. You know, obviously, if we're dealing with expendables or attritables, making the systems as inexpensive and multifunction as we can is important.
Just a couple more questions. Yes, you can. Somebody asked about, can you put in more than one proposal in a given area? The answer to that would be yes. A couple questions here on, are you looking for something to feed the existing CAC2S, and what kind of range are you looking for?
I guess I don't know what CAC2S is. In range, I guess it'll depend on the sensor, whether it's an EO or an RF focus sensor. If that's directed at AOI2.
I believe so.
Well,
Yeah.
I would say range. You know, as we go to distributed sensors, or proliferated surveillance, as the topic says, things get a little different than the way maybe we've spec'd in the past. You know, this is an R&D effort rather than an acquisition effort. So rather than saying I need system X that sees Y nautical miles or kilometers out, as you go to the proliferated system, the range of the individual system will depend on, you know, what kind of platforms you put it on. So there's a lot of interrelated questions, and we're happy to talk. We're happy to talk with people. But you know, if you're going to go on something too small, then maybe we don't really get much coverage. RQ has an attritable vehicle, the Valkyrie, that's pretty high, so then you can see farther. You know, it's really a matter of just having some discussion and figuring out what we might be able to envision fitting into a network of systems.
Okay, and for everybody's edification, CAC2S was Command and Control Security Systems. The follow-on question is, communications in a mesh network part of situational awareness?
And so there again, I think it's, you know, convergence of systems, or putting multiple functions into a single thing. Yes, but generally, I don't think our topic was really envisioning communication systems. But certainly, if it's a multifunction system, that would be of interest.
Okay. And Brian, I don't know if you want to answer this one because it actually goes back to AOI 1, but they're asking if this is related, or AOI 1 is related to Agility Prime in some way.
Yeah, certainly. Barth, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
I'll go ahead and let you answer that since you are the expert on that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. Okay, I'm trying to track down the question to repeat.
The question is VTOL? I'm sorry. Is VTOL related to the Agility Prime program in some way?
Yeah, as I explained earlier, this is kind of the OFRN AOI thing is an adjunct to the Agility Prime activity. It isn't the same. It isn't a replacement. It's just something that supports it. The Agility Prime activity right now is basically the Air Force assisting venture capitalists and other people developing electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. There is a website for that. There's a ecosystem, I think they call it, or whatever, that is all on the web. And so what we have found as some of the critical technologies and linchpins from the Agility Prime effort, some common technology hurdles, if you will, and technology things are represented by this AOI. These are tough problems that the Agility Prime community needs to solve in order to be able to get to an entry into market with a safe vehicle. So and a profitable one. This basically represents a genericized version of technological challenges that the Agility Prime community faces.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, well, we'll circle back if we need to and try to answer some additional questions here towards the end, but I hate to short the other AOIs and opportunities to ask questions on them as well. So at this time, I think we'll go ahead and proceed to AOI number 3.
Yes, and I think this is where I need to do my handoff over to Dr. Rick Arnold. So they are the primary AOIs for NAMRO-D. So Rick, if you're online still, do you want to go ahead and start covering these?
Becky, is Rick on?
There he is.
Hello, Rick. We can hear you. All right. Well, I'll try to help Rick out here to keep this moving. Do we have anybody from the 7-Eleven on the call right now that can provide a little bit more insight into patient care in austere and contested environments?
Hello?
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 We can hear you, Rick.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what went wrong. I had computer and phone audio working earlier, and apparently they both went out. But as long as you can hear me, I'll talk to. Actually, NAMRO-D is on AOIs 3, 4, and 5, and I'd like to just give kind of an overview of our command briefly, because I think it will kind of inform some questions and our interests and approach with respect to all three of them. And AOI 3, 4, and 5, I'll note also are shared with AFRL, and specifically with the 7-Eleven, the Human Performance Wing component of AFRL. And we are co-located here, and we'll work closely together in all three of these AOIs. What the point I wanted to make about NAMRO-D, however, is that we don't have programmatic efforts or programmatic funding. We have a mission space. We execute reimbursably funded research exclusively, so we have external sponsors for our research as well, external meaning DoD sponsors, but we don't have programmatic fundings. So our interest in these AOIs is a little less, it was a little more ad hoc, I'll say, in that they can support our research efforts that may change year to year based on our external funding sponsors. But we do have a constrained mission space that we work within. And I'll note that AOI 3, in addition to 4 and 5, are areas of growth that we are focusing on moving forward. So with respect to AOI 3, patient care in austere and contested environments, I'll note that the Air Force is the lead service for aeromedical evacuation, and they have a very large and robust program of research here at Wright-Patt. We work closely with them. I'll note for the Navy, looking at future operations and concept of operations for future operations, there is an increased focus on maritime patient care and patient evacuation in maritime environments. So there is an increased focus on naval. The Navy does not have currently a very robust aeromedical evacuation program. If we're looking at island-based and ship-based patient evacuation, we're not going to be flying large transports such as support the Air Force, C-17 supporting Air Force aeromedical evacuation. We're going to be looking more likely at tilt rotor MV-22. It's at much longer distances. This is an unpressurized aircraft. We're dealing with much greater swings in temperature. We're looking at higher vibration environment. So our interests specifically are in very likely the technologies that AFRL is going to be interested in, but looking at ruggedized, better power characteristics, and also patient monitoring in a much more, much less controlled environment for longer legs, and that's essentially it in terms of NAMR-D is interested in patient care. It's for these maritime operations using other aircraft that are not traditionally used for these types of missions. We also do have interest in UAV-based casualty evacuation. This is something that has been bandied about in DoD circles. We do not have any active research in that area, but if there were technologies developed under OFRN that might have a Navy or Marine Corps application, we'd be very interested in partnering to further development of those in order to inform future Navy and Marine Corps missions. So that in a nutshell is AOI 3 from NAMR-D's perspective. I don't know if there's anyone on from the 711th to speak to this one. That is a much larger program.
Yeah, this is Logan Williams from the 711th. I'm standing in for Darren Ott, but I can speak a little bit to this area. So for our patient care in austere environments, we're really looking at research that can help improve care in really the role 1 and 2 environments, really from point of injury to med evac. So it's covered pretty well in the second half of this narrative here, but the technologies that involve casualty monitoring or smart medical equipment and autonomous care, really we're looking at how do you get care to the airmen in a contested environment or austere environment in which medical care or traditional medical care is essentially unavailable or not immediately available. So we're looking at improvements in self-aid, buddy care, self-care, and anything that will prolong the life of the airman until they can receive a higher level role of care. So I guess I'll take any specific questions about that. I think that may be a better way to address this topic because it is pretty broad-based, as Richard says.
Becky, do we have any questions
Yes.
specifically for 3?
Yes. Is closed loop control of medical systems within cyber physical platform of interest in AOI number 3?
Yeah, so closed loop control is of interest. That is one of our premier products that we continue to invest in, where we can use closed loop control and what additional environments we may be able to operate that in. So yeah, closed loop control definitely fits under AOI 3.
Okay. Any other questions for AOI 3? I see we have quite a few for AOI 4, but I want to make sure that we give anybody a chance to ask any other questions on number 3.
Oh, I see one more. Operator survivability seems to be the focus of AOI number 3. Also, I suspect in-flight interventions would be welcome.
Yes, absolutely. So anything that gets them through the role 1 and role 2 level of care, it's really from point of injury back to robust hospital level care. So in-flight care is also of interest for AOI 3.
I would, just from Namrudi's perspective, I would agree with both of Logan's previous 2 answers as well. Namrudi would also be interested.
And I think there's one more for AOI 3 that I see. Do you see robotics having a role in this area?
Yes, I do. Whether that robotic solution is through, some sort of telepresence device or something that, the en-route care facility is equipped with, say, during medical evac for immediate surgery. Yeah, absolutely. If there's something innovative in the robotic realm or the remote surgery or telepresence, or even completely autonomous care systems, that would be of interest as well, yes.
Okay, great. Are we ready? We can go to AOI 4, and we already have quite a few questions on that one.
We did have one more for 3.
Okay.
If we want to get that one in.
Sure.
Would there be interest in remote health assessment prior to landing, such as remote heart rate monitoring?
Yes, there is a little bit of interest in that. However, current research has covered a lot of those needs fairly well. There's progress along those lines already. I think we're really looking for more innovative solutions that are really going to move the needle beyond that. But that falls under the umbrella of AOI 3.
Okay, we can move to AOI 4. And for our SMEs, would you like to touch on this a little bit, or you want to dive right into questions?
So Mark, did you have another SME that was up for AOI 4? Or is that my area standing in for Dr. Ott?
I believe that is your area standing in.
You got it. I sort of recognize that. So this is of interest in our Total Exposure Health Initiative in AFRL and the Air Force Medical Service. The idea is to develop personal exposure monitoring devices, such as, but not just limited to, things like passive dosimeters or wearable physiological monitoring that can inform both immediate threats to the airmen in terms of toxic chemicals or compounds, but also other environmental exposures that may lead to physiological changes. I would be interested in broadening this somewhat beyond just toxic analytes, as there's innovation to be found. For example, maybe psychological or traumatic or injury exposures, which then change underlying physiological responses that are being monitored to immediately report that to understand unit performance and readiness in the austere environment. So if there are a lot of questions, let me spend the rest of the time addressing those questions.
Becky, I'll let you handle that.
Well, and if I could just add, so this is Rick Arnold from NAMRD again. So I got Dr. Karen Moomey as our lead SME for this. So she passed on a few bullets for me to mention interests broadly in environmental and toxicological exposures, but some specific areas are fuel and fuel component exposure and noise dosimetry, with the focus on deployability, wearability, something that is not going to add a lot of weight or bulk, multi-sensors to the greatest extent possible, and modularized multi-sensors, ruggedized and miniaturized, were I think all consistent with what Logan mentioned, but those are some specific interests and characteristics that Dr. Moomey asked me to pass along. Over.
So Rick, let me add on to that a little bit. So in terms of miniaturized and multi-sensors, there's also interest in using existing smart devices that the airmen may already have, like iPhone, Apple Watch, Garmin, Fitbit, those sorts of devices to collect and aggregate exposure or physiologic data. There was something I was going to say. Oh, so the noise exposure and jet fuels. So not just jet fuels, but also combustion and partial combustion byproducts are of great interest over here in the Air Force. And so that fits under AOI4 as well. Also, VOCs, neurotoxins, and particulates, as long as we're expanding that list. Okay, so questions?
Okay, here's a question. Is there interest in developing personal exposure devices that track physical job demands to assess injury risks?
Yes, there is some interest in that. That falls under an area of research we have called context-based monitoring, but really linking the exposure measurement to some contextual sensor, whether that's location tracking or some sort of inertial tracking, so that we can tell what was being performed, what task was being performed at the time of the exposure. That can give us a lot of information to manage exposures and minimize the risk to the airmen. Traditionally, a bioenvironmental engineer or industrial hygienist will observe tasks being performed for a limited amount of time and then draw generalizations about the exposure risks based upon the limited observation window. But looking at sensors that can extend the observation window really to 24 hours and inform the context of those exposures is of interest.
Okay, another question. Is a person exposure monitoring device for specific volatile organic compounds such as benzene, formaldehyde, naphthalene, etc. a good fit?
Yes, with a big if. If those compounds that you are proposing to monitor have a direct impact on airman performance, so they're directly impacting, say, a physiological function, cardiovascular, pulmonary, or they're impairing cognition at levels that that would be present in a DoD relevant environment, then yes, personal exposure devices for specific VOCs are of interest. However, it needs to be because we know that those VOCs are going to impact the performance of the airmen in a real measurable way. We have a lot of work in passive dosimetry. The passive dosimetry is sort of twofold. One is to understand what an airman is exposed to over sort of the course of their career. You know, for example, if they claim they were exposed to Agent Orange or something, we'll be able to go back and look at the passive dosimeter and understand that exposure record. But it's also a discovery tool for us to understand what analytes of specific interest are being captured in the passive dosimeters that we would need to monitor in real time with a personal exposure device. So as we fill out that information void of what analytes are impacting performance and what we need to monitor more specifically, it would inform this question about personal exposure monitoring for specific compounds. So we can work more closely if there's interest on some specific compounds. Next question.
Okay, what are the form factor cost requirements of the device?
Low C-swap, always low C-swap, low cost, low size, weight, and power. You know, ideally, the holy grail would be, you know, something that costs less than $1 that monitors everything in the environment for all airmen everywhere. You know, we have some work in that area, like a passive dosimeter silicon wristband. The silicon just absorbs everything in the environment and holds it essentially forever. Not, you know, not the high volatiles, but something like that is sort of where we're pushing for the holy grail of exposure monitoring. It's cheap, it's lightweight, it's unobtrusive, it has no power requirement, it doesn't interfere with the mission. The problem with that is it's not a real-time device, right? That requires a laboratory analysis after the fact. So, you know, if that could change color or something in real time, maybe that would be pushing closer to where we're going. But the holy grail is minimal to zero C-swap. So the closer you can get to that, the better.
Okay. Is there interest in networking of sensors?
Yes, there is. So a personal worn sensor is not always going to be the answer in a specific mission context or environment, especially when you think of things like maintenance depots or flight lines and all of the toxic exposures that occur in those environments. Sensor area networks may be the right solution there in combination with, say, something like GPS tracking the airman's phone that's in his pocket to understand where he is, combined with area monitoring of where toxic exposures are, or where the concentration levels are high enough. I can imagine that, you know, tying back into some sort of time of exposure algorithm that tracks where the airman was in that sensor network to understand what the ultimate exposure is and the health risk to the airman. So absolutely, some sort of solution like that would be viable.
Okay. Can you be specific what toxic chemicals you are focusing on?
Can I be specific? There are literally millions of toxic chemicals. Right now, we're focusing primarily on neurotoxins, VOCs, partial combustion byproducts, and particulate matter, because these are found in DoD relevant environments, right? So flight line exposures, jet fuels, partial combustion, engine bleed air is something that not only are our aircrew breathing, but also the patients that we transport on those aircraft are breathing the engine bleed air. So understanding contaminants that may be in the bleed air, theater operations, you know, dust and fine particulates that are found in, you know, the Middle East theater areas. These are all examples of very DoD relevant exposures. So I can't name specific chemicals, but you know, obviously chemicals that are relevant in a DoD context are all of interest. Specifically, chemicals that relate to an immediate impact on airman performance. So let's take an example of something that's in the news quite frequently is PFAS and PFOA. That's a forever chemical. We know that our service members are exposed to it, especially, search and rescue firefighters, et cetera. However, there's not an immediate mission impact. If you're exposed to PFAS, you don't all of a sudden become unable to continue fighting the fire, right? It's not an immediate impact to the firefighters. So that's more of a long-term health impact. And while that is important to address, what we're really looking at for personal exposure devices is something that's going to impact health and performance in real time. That's why we're asking for exposure levels in real time, because they're intended to inform operations in real time. If we just needed exposure levels over a career, that would be something more for longitudinal health and safety.
All right, great. If we could, let's move on to AOI 5.
Okay.
And Logan, you can address this if you would, or Rick.
I'll let Rick take this first.
Sure. So AOI, I think my computer, I don't see it on the screen. I think my screen may have frozen again, but this is the acceleration AOI. So we have, NAMRD has very broad interest, and I know AFRL does as well. So I'll use the opportunity to plug Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is probably as a result of some recent construction and consolidation of capabilities as easily DoD and the U.S. single site leading research center for human acceleration research, probably is the case worldwide as well. Our interests are very broad, and from NAMRD's perspective, we're focused on aviation contexts, so fast jet, fighter jets, and also rotary wing aviation. So detecting and mitigating the effects of acceleration, so high G acceleration, effects that, obviously for effects on G-induced loss of consciousness that can occur, but also problems with neck pain in particular. We have a lot of equipment being loaded on flight helmets that are now causing issues with maneuvering under high Gs, with neck strain, neck pain, and injury. We're looking at issues of dynamic acceleration that can lead to motion sickness. So motion sickness mitigation, air sickness mitigation is a strong interest area as well. Also with dynamic acceleration and the effects that can have on the vestibular system and vestibular illusions that can lead to spatial disorientation in pilots. This is the number one single cause of flight mishaps, not just in the Navy or in the DoD, but in aviation generally. So issues related to mitigating spatial disorientation are strong interest area, and of course also whole body vibration and issues it has with fatigue, human performance, and neck and back pain as a result of fatigue. NAMRD not so much in impact acceleration, although I know AFRL has interest in impact acceleration as well. And of course, they do have the DoD's only high G human centrifuge now here on the campus at Wright-Pat. So again, in a nutshell, I still don't see the slide, so I may be skipping something that's on there. My apologies. I'll be happy to answer when we come to the Q&A though. So that's probably it from NAMRD's perspective. Over.
Rick, I think you covered pretty much everything on the slide. The only thing I would add from the Air Force perspective is, we now have a responsibility to serve the medical needs of Space Force as well from AFRL. And so as these acceleration effects extend to the Space Force's role in manned space travel going forward, we'd be interested in that. Substantially, all of these acceleration effects are the same. So If there are space unique applications though that are not covered in atmospheric flight, we'd also be interested in those as well.
Okay, do we have any questions for AOI 5? Becky?
I haven't seen any come up yet.
Okie dokie, we'll give it just a minute. There was a question actually on an earlier AOI, but I think it's sort of generally applicable really to them all, which would be when it comes to what technology readiness level type answer our SMEs are looking for many of these AOIs. So my stab would be that in general, we're looking for, applied research. So probably something that TRL 3 or above. I don't know if Rick or Logan, if you have any specific comments on that.
I'd say probably in that 3 to 6 sweet spot for the lab. That's where we're really interested. As we start getting beyond TRL, 6 or 7, we're really transitioning that off onto commercial partners and looking for commercial industry to take the lead and develop that into a COTS product.
All right. Do we see anything yet for AOI 5?
No.
Okay, we can go on to AOI 6.
And Mark, this is Brian. I'm not so sure Dr. Sharma is on the line, but we do have Dr. McKinley, I believe, on the line. Andy, are you on the call?
I am, yeah. Dr. Sharma was not available. He had a conflict today, so I'm going to be going over the AOI 6.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so basically we're interested in brain-machine interface technologies to both enable bidirectional communication between the man and machine, and also allow for active control of technology and DoD vehicles. So this is all non-invasive. This is really focused on developing technology that healthy, normal people can use. A lot of the BMI technology is, outside the DoD, is focused on, recovery from injury or, reestablishing, lost functions. But, here we're interested in how we can use non-invasive BMI technology to change the way that the DoD controls technology. This can also include things like monitoring brain state and providing augmentation strategies to change brain state in a way that benefits performance or training or learning. That also extends to things that are, outside the brain physiology. Can be other types of physiological monitoring or even behavioral monitoring, eye tracking as an example, cardiovascular activity as an example. But those can be supplemented to achieve the multimodal interface. So that's basically this AOI at a high level. I guess I'll look and see if there's any questions here.
We can give it just a minute here and see if anybody has any questions. Becky, do you see anything yet for AOI 6?
No, I don't have any yet.
Okay. And since I'm sure a lot of people are probably like me, which is I always think of questions as soon as I close my Zoom window or walk out of a conference room. So there'll be opportunities, of course, in the future to ask additional questions as they might come up. Okay. Anybody have any questions on AOI 6? Give you one more shot here for those that are like me and slow typers. Somebody's typing, they said, so we'll give them we'll give them just a few more seconds. If you'd like to ask a question real time that deals with the specific AOI too, we can, I believe we can have you unmute and ask as well. We just need to have you raise your hand to identify that you'd like to ask a question. I'm trying to keep up with that. Looks like somebody has put their hand up. So Amy Magnus, Becky, do you need to unmute her or can she do it herself?
Okay, I think I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Well, so this AOI seems to be very focused on direct control of the aircraft. But we're also looking at how biometric might contribute to live virtual constructive interactivity in general, if that makes sense. So is the focus on this AI laser focused to controlling aircraft, or like a single operator on a single aircraft, or might there be willingness to look at how biometrics can contribute to governance in general of interaction between drones and human teams?
The answer is yes. I think that this topic is much broader than simply controlling an aircraft or any other kind of vehicle or warfighting system. Even things like just providing more information directly to the brain, as basically bypassing our traditional sensory channels and just writing directly to the brain is another possible application here. But what you mentioned in terms of using biometrics to improve the interaction between the operator and the machine, that's definitely of interest here in this AOI.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, and we know of research like that. We have partners down in Florida who work in that directly. So thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Sure.
Great.
And we do have a question.
Yep.
Last time AR-related assistance to maintenance personnel was mentioned. Are there any other use cases you can illustrate?
Sure. So, another use case example might be, controlling multiple aircraft at the same time. So, multiple remotely operated, drones, as they're called in the media. We call them remotely piloted aircraft. But, coordinating activities among, a variety of different assets. Another example would be, monitoring brain state and using that information to try and keep the brain in an optimal state of learning for training applications. In the ISR mission, you could use brain-machine interface for both the control of the intelligence and imagery systems, and also to provide situational awareness of targets that have already been identified, areas of the scene that's already been searched. Basically, your imagination is the only limit here.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Becky?
No, that was it.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and then go on to AOI 7.
So Mark, this is Brian again. This is another transition point from AFRL NAMRU over to NASA Glenn. I believe we have Kirk Sackstetter on the call, and I'll turn it over to him to allow him to introduce his SMEs.
Good afternoon. Can I be heard?
We hear you.
Right at work this time. Yeah, we've had some starts and stops in the past. Hello, Brian and everyone. Good afternoon. There's 2 AOIs that were put forth by NASA Glenn, but with interest from AFRL in particular. The first one has to do with advanced power systems. And we do have SME with us this afternoon that can describe this and answer questions. His name is Ray Beach, and I believe I've seen his name online. So I believe you're with us, Ray. And so I would invite you to just summarize what's here, and then, because there's a lot of words here, if you can summarize, and then see if we get to some good questions.
Okay, can you hear me, Kirk?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay, so the motivation behind this particular description here comes from work that has been done in the aircraft world associated with turboelectric and hybrid electric propulsion for transport size aircraft. Certainly that if you look at power wise, we're talking tens of megawatts and of course very high voltage, so moving up to the kilovolt and higher ranges as we get to the larger size aircraft. As well as the work that we're currently involved in looking at the lunar surface and the application of microgrids that will be put in place through landed assets that have to interconnect up. In the beginning stages, that's going to be in the tens to 100 kilowatt level. As we advance forward on the lunar surface, we're expecting to be able to provide the next level of space commercialization, which we'll be seeking to utilize those lunar resources. And as we go in that direction, we wind up in the megawatt categories with a growth in the system areas as we provide mining and prospecting and other operations on the lunar surface. In the case of the lunar surface, we're talking some fairly large distances. But again, as with the aircraft, we get up into megawatts and kilovolts, even in the early stages because of the large distances. So the motivation here now in this particular task is to start to realize benefits that we could accrue from the inflection point that we're now at, which is the application of digital control versus the analog controls that we've seen in the past, both with regard to regulators as well as switchgear that provides that capability for the control during nominal operation, and then of course off nominal control to be able to take the power system back to a nominal state. So there's a series of bullets here that kind of encapsulate the thoughts relevant to what does digital do for us in terms of improvements that would give us the ability to both to provide an overall increase in our reliability, to add an additional 9 through the application of collaborating microgrids. So that could occur in the aircraft area because of multiple engines or multiple grids on board the aircraft. And of course, the same thing for the lunar surface, which not only includes the different power sources, which could be both solar as well as nuclear, and different forms of energy storage. So the ability now to look to things that are more of a collaborative control because of the digital and the ability to interact. The ability to look at integrated system protection, so not a separate system, but a part of the digital controls that operate the system to give us the ability to operate continuously and provide power to the loads. Improvements with respect to stability to allow us to be able to handle nonlinearities and other things that we have seen in the past with both surface power systems as well as aircraft and spacecraft power systems, such as negative impedance or constant power loads. And potentially, because of the way in which the converters operate, bifurcation modes that you might get into, we now look to be able to handle these continuously via an adaptive control. We also recognize that for both aircraft and the spacecraft systems, thermal becomes an integral part of how we solve these issues. So being able to understand both the state of the system as well as understand how we can best utilize the waste heat and other products that we get from putting these kind of systems on board an aircraft or on a spacecraft becomes a part of what we see as the ability to further improve on our understanding of where the system is at, both in the nominal and off nominal state. And finally, from an energy storage perspective, we recognize that we are seeing improvements in not just electrochemical batteries, but capacitors, supercapacitors, flywheels, and other methods of energy storage that could provide us the capability of doing both bulk as well as distributed energy storage, and how those can contribute to an improvement in terms of the operation of the microgrids for aero and space. The tie-in here to terrestrial is definitely into the microgrid area. Throughout the power community, academia community within the state of Ohio, there's been a lot of good work that's been done over the years. I'm sure that the folks online here recognize the difficulty in seeing the terrestrial systems be fast at incorporating that technology. So we see an opportunity for both the aero as well as the space systems to kind of begin to take some of that knowledge base that exists in the academia community and now get this transferred into the microgrid community for terrestrial surface power as that grows across the nation, both for incorporation of renewables as well as the ability to get improved overall reliability throughout the system. I think that sums up this task.
Very good, Ray. Becky, are there any questions that you have seen pop up?
Yes, I see one for AOI 7. Let's see. We have technology partners outside of Ohio who could help us fully address the scope of AOI number 7. What is the required level of work in Ohio for the industry portion of the effort? We do plan to focus our work from our Ohio-based business and work with Ohio universities also, who are the leading Ohio universities working microgrid-related tech. I guess this was a more general question.
Yeah, it seems that might be better answered by the overarching organization. Mark, I think, are you in a position to answer how the partnering works?
Well, yeah, I think it'd be better probably left to answer at a later date where we can provide specifics on that. Although from your opinion, I guess, you might be able to answer the last portion of it, which is there anybody in the state from an academic perspective, university-wise, that you're familiar with that has been doing a lot of microgrid work, or is that sort of something everybody's doing?
Ray, can you address that?
So I can. Yeah, so with respect to the microgrids in general, so Ohio State already has a contract that was let associated with the development of the microgrid for their campus. And I know that in order to make that happen, I believe there is a local capability there, although I think the company itself is, I think the parent company, I believe, is actually out of France. But so there is a growing capability within the state, and Ohio State has been doing work in this area. The folks at Case Western Reserve have also been very active in the microgrid area, looking at various aspects for the Department of Energy. And there have been folks locally within the state associated with controls, and that includes Eaton and Rockwell International. So there are multiple universities as well as companies that are interested in the area. I also wanted to mention that in terms of how this could grow, NASA already has efforts ongoing in the lunar area. So work that could come out of this very well could progress to a NASA-funded lunar surface capability. So in terms of linkage into stuff that we're already doing, there certainly is a direct linkage into the lunar area. And I think you'll find in the aero area, it's the same thing. So the aero folks are also looking at what kinds of things they need to do to improve. So follow-on funding or growth in this area, I think through federal dollars is definitely possible on both the aero and space side.
Maybe a couple of quick ones here. Hopefully, one of the questions was, do they have to address all of the areas in their proposal?
No, I think to be clear here, there's a lot of work that's described here. So each of these bullets, you know, you could look at activities that could go on underneath them. But there are fundamental aspects of each of these that I think as you put together a proposal ought to at least be able to address how, you know, the particular proposer sees these kind of things being integrated together. But from a dollar standpoint, I think you have to pick from this what kinds of things you would focus on for this initial activity.
One other one here, probably before we need to move on, is are fuel cell solutions of interest to you?
Yes, you know, it should have been in the list of energy storage, but fuel cells could also be considered to be a power source as well. So if you look at an aircraft side of things, it could very well be some kind of a topping cycle that could be involved for turboelectric or hydroelectric applications. And in the lunar surface area, it's the same situation. So both fuel cells on landers could be a primary source using the fuel on the lander, as well as regenerative fuel cell. So it really should have been included in the list here.
Excellent. Kurt, you want to maybe go on to AOI 8?
Yes, Ray, thank you very much. I think there's going to be more questions, and we will work with you and Jeffrey to get those questions answered after this is finished. The next area is quantum communications. I believe I see on the list that John Leckie has been able to join us. So John, if you can unmute your mic and maybe give us a summary of this area and then answer any questions that arise.
Yeah, sure, I'd be glad to. So NASA, well, the nation has a QIS. There's a nationwide quantum information science activity really trying to push towards developing quantum computing for the most part, but also quantum communications and quantum sensing. NASA Glenn is not so much involved in the computing aspect, but is very involved in the quantum communications aspect. And here the idea is to utilize free space quantum communications through space to provide long distance quantum links for an envisioned quantum network between local networks in various locations in the country, or even across the ocean. So, so what we're looking for is to be able to study the capability to provide quantum communication from ground to orbit, and then to other ground stations, so that we can generate these long distance entangled networks. So that's the overall goal that we're supporting from a national perspective. And what we're doing from the NASA Glenn standpoint is we're supporting this by developing metrology capabilities for quantum communications systems. We're also developing test beds, including an aircraft-based test bed. And I should also mention that there are a number of other areas that folks at AFRL are also interested in. I think it's more in the materials, but and I'm hesitant to say too much about the AFRL interest without the folks here. But so there's definite interest in this area from the NASA Glenn perspective, and also from AFRL. Some of the things that we're looking for are high brightness or high efficiency entangled sources, quantum repeaters, and as a subset of that is something for quantum memory, single photon detectors, and the like. And I didn't mention this here, but I should also throw in quantum interconnects. Those are very interesting also. So anything that would be utilized in a quantum communication system is something that we're looking for, anywhere from the material level up to the device level. Because that's a question we had before. So folks working on materials that let's throw out like nitrogen vacancy centers for memory. That's something that's of interest. Or new types of sensor material that would allow us to do better photon detection. Those are fair game. And then anything up to, entire detectors or entire sources. Does that help, Kurt?
I think that's great. I think there's a question that has come up for both topics 7 and 8 regarding the desired TRL level of the contributions you're looking for. So John, I don't know if you can say, you can describe how you view that, and then if Ray is still on, we can get him to answer, give his perspective.
Yeah, so the TRLs that we're looking at are, since quantum information science is really low TRL right now. I think anything from, something like a 1 or a 2 up to something like a 5 is what we would expect. Something where it's in the lab, or we can envision how we could package it. At NASA Glenn, we're really focusing on trying to take the lab systems and see the best systems that scale up and support a network as best that have the best possibility for scaling up to support a network. And we've been really looking at packaging those for spaceflight. So anywhere from 1 to 5, I think seems appropriate for AOI 8.
And I'm breaking protocol here briefly, but Ray, if you're still on, did you want to say anything about the TRL level of the power systems in number 7? If you're speaking, you're muted. Okay, well, we will save that for later. So, John, or Becky, are there other questions for number 8 that we see?
Yes, we do have questions. Let's see, if we have a method of pointing the free space laser comm unit much superior to your existing free space laser comm approaches, including quick, wide angle, random access pointing, and extremely fine pointing, would that be of interest under this topic?
Yeah, I think that that would be of interest. Being able to do quick acquisition is extremely important, and also having highly stable acquisition is likewise important, because jitter definitely feeds into our efficiency, our link efficiency, and so yeah, so that's a reasonable subject.
Okay, let's see. What capability are you looking at in a comm link, your distance, NLOS, and any specific applications voice we look to build devices?
Okay, so NLOS, sorry, whoever asked the question. Expand on what the acronym is.
Is that a possibility to get the questioner to speak like we had recently? Just to ask the question directly?
Yeah, it's coming from the Youngstown incubator, whoever that happens to be. So I don't know if they have comm or not.
They have a few people on the line. I know LOS is line of sight, and I'm going to assume that N would be no line of sight.
Yeah, it's so non-line of sight. I got it. Okay, so non-line of sight. I mean, that's really far out, and that's really kind of a neat idea. But I have to just with what we've been looking at right now in terms of just trying to deal with line of sight and the link throughput that we anticipate that we can generate. I'm not sure how to do non-line of sight, but if non-line of sight can be done, we would love it. So there's no, so that would absolutely be a wonderful thing. But I just have to say it's kind of I have some ideas on how you can do it, but it would be tricky to get the link margins that we want to.
Okay. So in wanting to respect everybody's time and trying to get the rest of our AOIs done in the time that we have left. Although I will tell everybody that we will go past 3 o'clock to try to answer questions as best we can. But Kurt, if it's okay with you, I would like to try to go ahead and move and give our NASIC partners an opportunity here to go through their 3 AOIs as well.
Completely fine. Completely fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. Brian, you want to do the introduction?
Sure. So for NASIC, our federal POC is John Hawkins. And John, I don't know if you're on the call or not. But if John is not on the line, if there's any other representatives from NASIC that can address our next AOI, which is applications of commercial satellites to humanitarian disaster and defense topics, we would like to invite you into this discussion at this time.
This is Mark Brown. I'm here and I am from NASIC, although I'm not familiar with this particular AOI.
Okay. All right.
Yes, this
so
is
maybe
Becky.
what we can do.
Stephen Zeck was supposed to be on this call, but he had something come up and he couldn't participate. So he said that any questions that come up, we'll answer them afterwards.
Okay, that sounds good. So I believe we then can go on to AOI number 10, which Mark, I believe you you are the SME for that one from NASIC with regards to large data set triage.
Yeah, that's me.
All righty. Over to you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm supposed to discuss basically what we're looking for?
That's correct.
Okay, this says large data set triage. I can tell you within the organization, I'm the principal, I reside in the chief data office, and I'm the principal data architect for NASIC. And I have several things going on right now where we are looking at trying to triage data sets. It would be, we call it trove data for some of the really messy stuff, but it's all really, to me, big data. And there are several aspects of this that we're looking at. One is normalizing and conditioning of that data that's coming in. And the other aspect of this would be how is it, how are we going to index it? Because there are several ways to go about this. Something like Elasticsearch can index, but it does gives you no context about the data. So so discussions about that would be helpful as far as ways to provide an index that gives context, something like an RDF or a triple store. The other piece of this would be in an RDF, I've been looking and searching about this for a while, but there's not a lot of companies out there right now that do a data store with RDF. And the World Wide Web is built off of RDF. I mean, that's how you find your data, is through resource descriptive framework stores. So it's very good at finding any kind of data you want. But when you look at commercial vendors, they don't really, there's one or two that might offer that, but there's not very many out there that offer that kind of capability. So we're really just looking to tackle all those kinds of data, and then how do we bring that together, like take those large data sets and integrate them. Does that help?
Sounds great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Becky, do we have any questions for AOI 10?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, we'll give it just a few more seconds here. Mark, can you talk to AOI 11 as well, or were you just primarily going to talk about AOI 10?
What is 11?
Journal article warning and correlation.
Well, yeah, that's okay. That goes. There's some symmetry there between, or some synergy there between the one I just spoke about, and so it's talking about interest in tools and can read and correlate people, places, and technologies. Again, the technology I just mentioned, RDF, it does triple stores, and it does all of those kinds of connections. And it can, you can, if you build your data in those kind of RDF structures, they're easily put together. And so that would be a way of doing this, although we don't have a lot of folks in our organization that understand RDF. I'm one of the few.
And one of the questions that appears then maybe they're asking for you to, if you can anyways, to detail maybe a little more on what you mean by integrating data sets. And that may actually apply to both of these 10 and 11.
What do I mean by integrating?
Integrating data sets.
Okay, so let's say we have two databases that we have, and you've you've done them in RDF. Well, there's something called a URI. I think it's called Uniform Resource Identifier, and that identifies every place, person, or thing, or whatever that you're identifying. And then when you bring them together, you don't have to do anything special. The RDF store literally brings them together and puts the connections together. So that's what I mean by integrating the data. You can take, today, if you tried to take one SQL database and another SQL database, and you tried to bring them together, it wouldn't work because it's not programmed that way. But RDF is flexible enough that you can just bring them together, and the URIs will just merge, and you'll have a graph that indicates how the data comes together.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Becky, are there any other questions for either 10 or 11 that you see?
No, I haven't seen any.
Yeah, for 11, let me also say one thing. I'm reading down here. It says capable reading, processing in multiple languages. I know we were working with AFRL with doing something called Haystack, and that has some of those capabilities in there, and it's a matter of bringing it in. We now have, we're going to have 3 prototypes or pilots that we're going to do in the next 6 months, and then we have follow-on funding to support that next year as well.
Excellent. All right. Brian, do you have any last comments before I turn it over to Dave to talk about a couple things?
No, I just would just like to extend my thanks out to all the federal SMEs who took time out of their day today to attend this pre-solicitation engagement with university and industry partners. This was really, I think, rich discussion today, and you guys provided a ton of clarifying descriptions, and I just appreciate the time you took to answer all the questions. This is exactly the level of engagement that we were looking at prior to the solicitation going out. So again, thank you for taking time out of your day.
And I'll echo that. Thank you very much to all of our SMEs today. This was outstanding. And in part, it was actually why I kind of let it keep going, because the conversation was so rich and robust. So that was just outstanding. And I'm sure, as I said before, there's probably a lot more questions that we just didn't have time today to get to. Dave, I'll turn it over to you. I know there was just a couple things you wanted to try to show to everybody who are interested in teaming.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And I'm going to start sharing my screen here real quick, because I wanted to show something live, and I'll go kind of fast through this also. So I think you've got my screen now. And so I just want to mention to everybody that some of this stuff, these dates might be subject to some change. So keep an eye on the solicitation and the announcements that come out. But this is where we stand right now with the training schedule. So there'll be a training session. It's now scheduled for December 2nd. And this would be mandatory training, for the proposal development, because your success in the program is all related to, how responsive you are, to the solicitation and your team that you put together. There will be training then after a down select, as teams head towards the pitch sessions. So we'll have pitch training, and then there'll be one-to-one optional pitch reviews, and work with the teams on some pitch training. So, some of the training that'll happen, we've got a cost volume training coming up. Chris Lockhart is going to do that. He's our contracts person with Parallax. And then Chris will cover the requirements for the business proposal and the cost proposal, and the changes from round 4 if you were a participant in that. Then in addition, then we'll have training on the technical volume. Burr Zimmerman will handle that, and that'll cover the components of the technical volume that you need to address, and give information on what's needed, and some tips on putting together good technical volume. After that, we'll have some pitch training with Chris Mather. He provided it in the last round also, to go over a 15-slide deck and what are some good practices and some best practices in putting together a pitch deck, and then also just in pitching in general and reviews and feedback on that. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is kind of new this round. If you need a partner, if you're looking for another researcher at a university, because it requires 2 universities and an industry partner, or if you need an industry partner, or if you need to just fill a gap, a technical gap in your team, we have a facility now that we've taken from the work that we do at Apex, and this is a team matchmaking. So you can go to OFRN.org, and I'm going to try doing it right now, and we'll see if we can make this work. And hopefully that brings that up. I don't know, Mark, if you can see the website.
Yes.
Okay. So if you go to OhioFRN.org, and as you go down the page, if you see the team matchmaking link, you hit this link and it'll take you to a form to fill out. You just put your contact information in there. You put your organization and select the type of partner you are looking for. So you select one of these. You need a research partner from another Ohio university. You need an industry partner that's a for-profit or nonprofit. You need both, in case you need both an industry partner and a Ohio University partner, or we have a team and need a federal partner, so you can check the box to say, look, we kind of need to talk to somebody. And then which AOI you're interested in, so that we can better align you up. And then provide a brief explanation of your technology or the capabilities that you're bringing into the project, and then a brief explanation of what you need in a partner. So this in the back end, this populates a database that we've got, and we can get you matched up. We take that information, we fan it out back across the network. We'll make it available also online in an anonymized fashion, so that you can look through who's looking for partners, and we'll work to get you connected up. So this has worked real well in the work that we do in Apex. In the last round, we've created over 180 partner introductions. And we hope this helps with OFRN as well. So with that, you can take control back, Becky, and that's all I needed to say about the team matchmaking and the training.
Awesome, Dave. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Dennis, if you're still on, would you like to make any comments?
Sure, I'll say a few words, Mark. So Brian and the SMEs, the federal SMEs, I can't thank you enough. Today was excellent, and the interaction was really what we're looking for. So thanks to all of you in participating today. It was a very energetic and fruitful discussion. As Dave mentioned, we may change a few things on dates, so please keep aware of that. We're maybe looking at some ways to simplify the process a little bit more for you based on some feedback we've gotten so far. So keep an eye on the website. All of you that have attended today, we'll make sure we get information out to you. But feel free to reach out to Dave through that website to get connected. Dave participated very actively in Agility Prime, and I think over the 50-some teams he supported, 33 of them won on those STTRs. And I think 6 out of the 7 teams out of OFRN that submitted under Agility Prime also won across the state. So we've got a good support network and team to help you get connected as best as possible. So Brian and all the leads for the federal centers, thank you again. You've done an amazing job. And Mark, you did a great job today too, leading us through this. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dennis. Becky, one last housekeeping item. Is the video recording of this, will that be eventually put on the website as well?
Yes, that's our goal.
Okay. That was one of the questions that we didn't answer from earlier on. So, and we'll try to do our best to get the rest of the questions answered. We'll work with Brian as sort of our overall point of contact with all of our SMEs to see exactly what the process is that eventually we're going to use to make sure that for all of you listening that have questions that we didn't get answered today, we can make sure that we get answers for those questions or any additional questions that you might have in the future. Becky, I don't know if you want to share the second to the last slide, which has some contact information on it just for last minute here. And that way, if people want to take a screenshot or something of that, they can. And then we will close it out. There you go. So you can feel free to send an email to Bob or myself or Becky, and we will be happy to make the connections for you. If you didn't get a chance to, since we did go through it fairly quickly with Dave and the form for teaming, just go to the website, which is the ohiofrn.org website, and you can fill out the teaming form on that, and that's a great way to put together a team if you're a individual researcher maybe at a university and is looking for a small business to work with. We can help you out with that. Otherwise, thank you very much for everybody for attending today. We truly appreciate it. Sorry, went a little bit over, but the conversation and the discussion I think was outstanding. And we really, truly do appreciate all of our subject matter experts from our federal lab partners in joining in today. So Becky, I'll turn it back over to you for anything else to close it out.
Okay, well, like General Bartman said, we will get all the questions summarized, and I will be posting it to the website shortly. And if you come up with other questions, just feel free to email me. And once again, we will be summarizing all this and putting it in the FAQ for the round 5. And that's all I have.
All right, everybody have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.